Sebastian Dullien joins us today. He's an economist and professor at the HTW University of Applied Sciences here in Berlin. It's good to have you with us. And of course, you've been following all these debt negotiations. What's your impression of these very last talks this week?
I mean, finally, the two sides are moving closer together, and we now have a real chance to come to a compromise, at least for this time being and for the last tranche of the second rescue package.
OK, you say there's a real chance. Only recently, the head of the International Monetary Fund, Christine Lagarde, said that Ukraine is more creditworthy than Greece. That doesn't really bode well, does it?
I mean, Ukraine has a debt-to-GDP ratio of maybe 90%. Greece has one of 170%. So, well, the debt level of Ukraine is lower than that of Greece. And it's very, very clear that without new aid, Greece will not be able to repay its debt. So I guess you can say it's more creditworthy than Ukraine, even though Ukraine is at the brink of bankruptcy itself.
Yeah. But it certainly will take a lot of goodwill on both sides. And right now, Greek savers, they continue to withdraw large volumes of money from Greek banks. The European Central Bank has approved more emergency funds for Greek banks. Does this mean that whatever happens, the ECB will keep the country rolling?
No, I mean, at one point, the ECB might not continue to do so, because legally the ECB can give emergency aid if the bank has good collateral. Good collateral means, for example, government bonds which are serviced. If the government stops paying interest rates on the bonds, then it's not good collateral anymore, and then the ECB cannot give more aid to Greek banks, and that would be the end of the Greek banking sector.
Now, let's say all goes well this week at least, and Greece will get by the end of the month those 7.2 billion euros. That's just about enough in order to pay the IMF and the EC back over the next 2 months. What then?
I mean, this is true. We are just talking about the last tranche of the second aid package, and this will not be the end. We already know that in the second half of the year there will be more payments for the Greek government to be done, and then the Greek government needs more aid in order to repay its creditors.
And of course, we've been there before. Sebastian Dullien, don't go anywhere, because we will continue this little chat. Now, back to our studio guest now, Sebastian Dullien from the HTW University of Applied Sciences in Berlin. And what you've just seen there is that austerity hasn't really reduced Greece's huge mountain of debt. It's actually increased it in a certain way. So why do creditors then insist on more austerity, on more cuts?
I mean, the first point is, if you do not do austerity, you need to give more money up front, and you never know whether they will repay it in the end. So they wanted to have this kind of policy because this would limit what they need to put on the table at the beginning.
But it's obviously not a solution. We've seen that.
I mean, clearly, austerity has been a failure, and the main result has been that the Greek economy has shrunk by almost 25% over the past years. And this is becoming more and more clear. But, I mean, there isn't an easy way out, because if you want to stop austerity, you need to get the money to spend from some place. And, well, the ECB isn't going to just print it.
Now, the Greek finance minister, Yanis Varoufakis, recently said that Athens doesn't actually want more money from its creditors, but a haircut, or if you like, a kind of forgiveness for the enormous debt. Would that be a way out?
Yeah, I mean, I think a haircut on the debt would be one of the preconditions for the Greek economy to return to debt. Sorry, not to return to debt, but
hopefully
hopefully not, but to return to growth. Because at the moment, Greece is just borrowing money in order to repay old debt. So they are not borrowing money to spend. So if this debt would be reduced, they would have room to maneuver elsewhere. And
then they could actually produce growth, something that is desperately needed. I mean, what else can do Greece right now in order to produce growth? Because otherwise we'll be revisiting the situation again and again.
Yeah, frankly, I believe without debt relief, Greece can do very little. Because just because this debt burden is there, private investors will be very reluctant to invest in Greece. Because, I mean, there will always be the debate, can Greece pay it? And there's always nationalization, expropriation, and so on the horizon. Yeah, and
eventually they won't be able to sell anything anymore anyway. Now, there are some experts, of course, who say that the best thing for Greece, and they don't mean it in a bad way, would be to say, all right, this didn't work out for us in the euro. Let's leave the euro. Let's introduce our own currency, whatever we shall call it, and then we can start anew.
I mean, the problem with this argument is that it would badly damage the European project and the euro itself. It would show markets that the euro is not irrevocable. And my fear would be that we might have capital outflows from Spain and Italy, and this might bring down the whole European project in the future. So
that's, of course, exactly what those who are in favour of a Grexit also argue, that Greece keeping in the euro at all costs jeopardizes the euro.
I mean, yes, of course, this is the argument from the other side, but you need to keep it in perspective. I mean, even the huge Greek rescue packages, they are nothing compared to Italy's debt. And Italy is just too big to fail on a global scale for the global financial system.
All right. Well, Sebastian Dullien, I fear that the discussion will go on, but not here right now. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for the invitation.